Welcome to Wonder Fungi. You've probably heard people throw around terms like a museum dose versus a heroic dose. One sounds like a pretty pleasant afternoon, right? The other, well, that sounds like a trip to another dimension entirely. But what's the real difference? The answer is way more complex than you might think, and honestly, understanding it is absolutely critical for safety.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How much is the right amount? You hear one person say a gram is a gentle start, but then someone else takes that same gram and has a completely overwhelming experience. So what gives? Why the huge difference? It's not just about your personal mindset or your tolerance, it's actually rooted in the wild, unpredictable nature of the mushrooms themselves.
All right, so in this explainer, we're going to get right to the bottom of this. We'll kick things off with the core dosage dilemma, then we'll dive into the science of why potency is so all over the place. After that, we'll look at the actual data on safety, understand the real risks, and wrap it all up with the single most important rule you need to know. Okay, let's just tackle the central problem head on. In medicine, we rely on precision. 200 milligrams of ibuprofen is always 200 milligrams of ibuprofen. End of story. But when you're dealing with a natural product like magic mushrooms, that logic just completely falls apart. Thinking a gram is a gram isn't just a little off, it can be genuinely dangerous. And here's the most crucial point to get. We are not dealing with a pill that's been perfectly measured out in some lab. We're dealing with a fungus. And just like one apple can be way sweeter than another, even from the same tree, one mushroom can be profoundly more potent than the one growing right next to it. This natural variability is the absolute key to understanding dosage.
So, let's get into the science of why this actually happens. This isn't just random chance, this inconsistency is explained by some really well-documented mycological principles.
Scientists talk about this in two ways. First, there's interstrain variability. That just means different types of mushrooms have different average strengths. That part kind of makes sense, right? But what's really fascinating is intra-strain variability. This means that even mushrooms from the exact same batch, grown in the exact same container, can have wildly different levels of psilocybin. And this isn't just a theory. Look at the hard data right here. The range is just staggering. Sample A has a tiny amount of the active compound. Sample B has over 25 times more. And get this, some batches have tested at nearly 100 times stronger than the weakest ones. Now just imagine taking a dose you think is mild, but it's actually 100 times more potent. This is exactly why that whole a gram is a gram idea is such a dangerous myth. So with that kind of crazy variability, it's totally natural to ask about safety. Old media portrayals often painted this picture of extreme danger. But what does the modern scientific data actually say? Let's separate the facts from the fear. This number right here is incredibly telling. The 2016 Global Drug Survey looked at 12,000 people who had used psilocybin mushrooms. Out of all of them, only 0.2%, that's just one single person in 500, ended up needing to seek emergency medical care. And just to put that 0.2% in perspective, the rate of people seeking emergency care for substances like MDMA, LSD, and cocaine was at least 5 times higher. So according to this data, psilocybin is statistically among the safest recreational substances out there. And here's the reason why. From a purely physical standpoint, its toxicity is extremely low. The lethal dose is estimated to be 1,000 times the amount you'd need for a psychoactive experience. To give you some context, the lethal dose of heroin is only about 5 times its effective dose. That shows a massive, massive physiological safety margin for psilocybin. But, and this is a really important but, low physical risk does not mean zero risk. The dangers are very real, but they're almost entirely psychological. They come from the sheer intensity of the experience when someone takes way more than they are prepared for. So what about that tiny 0.2% who did go looking for help? Well, their symptoms weren't a physical overdose. The top reasons reported were overwhelming anxiety, panic, and paranoia, the absolute classic signs of what people call a bad trip. These are incredibly difficult psychological states, not a direct physical threat to your body. Okay, so how do we tie all this together? We've got a natural product with completely unpredictable potency. We know it's physically very safe, but it also carries some very real psychological risks if the experience gets too intense. All of this points to one clear, logical conclusion for staying safe. The science of all that variability directly informs the protocol for safety. Since you can never be 100% certain of a mushroom's potency, you simply can't approach it with the same confidence you would a pharmaceutical.
The only responsible way forward is to assume you might have a highly potent batch and then act accordingly.
And really, it all just boils down to this simple, memorable, and potentially life-saving phrase. Start with a low dose so you can gauge the potency of any new batch you have. And go slowly. Give yourself plenty of time before you even think about taking more. This one single principle is the most effective tool we have to manage the biggest risk and overwhelmingly intense psychological experience.
This is the foundation of responsible use, and it's grounded directly in the scientific data. Please like and subscribe to Wonder Fungi for more science. Stay safe.